Good afternoon, everybody. This is Zach Beery, partnered with Sharon to talk about player-on-player violence. Um, I'm going over the topics of social disposition, usual causes, and recent outbreaks of player-on-player violence. When we talk about sports in American or even international society, violence plays a pretty big role. It's the sports that we have are aggressive in nature. With the high contact sports leagues, such as the National Football League and National Hockey League, injuries are going to be a part of the sport, and that's kind of going to be understood. But what is the difference between a typical sports injury and a violent injury? Is something that we looked at. The social disposition tells us what the player feels, acts, and how they emotionally attach to the game. What are they thinking throughout the game, and how are they going to act when one thing happens? So when you look at the social disposition, you're looking at the inherent activities of an athlete, and it says that research says that when you are put into a social situation or you're raised where violence is around you, then you're more likely to be violent. If you play a violent sport such as football or hockey, you're more likely to be violent off the field or off the ice. So there are some aspects on the social side that provide you some insight for violent actions within sports. The usual causes that we see with player-on-player violence is normally something that's out of frustration or some form of aggression. Something is pent up in these athletes. But it's also said that this aggression doesn't always lead to violence. So excuse me. Doesn't always lead to violence. It's in your background. So if you are one that is used to violence, or you accept violence from your society or your social standing, then you're probably going to be violent when you're aggressive. But it just goes on to state that in our paper that violence is kind of accepted in the American standard of sport, and even some international sports. You can look back. I can remember in international sports. I remember a soccer player physically headbutting another soccer player in the chest, and that was a big deal. Like, you had never seen anybody headbutt somebody before. But when they have the UFC, like within UFC, you could literally choke someone out, and that's totally acceptable. That's within the realms of the sport, and that's another thing that we see is having consent. Like, is it within consent of the sport that you're playing to have violent actions? Like, is it acceptable within? You give the examples of you have technical fouls in basketball. You have a penalty box in hockey. So, like, is it within those realms, or is it excessive? So, unconsented. But with some of the more recent outbreaks in player-on-player violence, I have linked a couple videos below this video to show you some of the things that I've put within my paper, and some of them are pretty violent. Some of them are not, but it just goes to show you that through high school athletics all the way to professional athletics, player-on-player violence is happening, and these are just some of the things that I went over the paper and Sharon has some of the other options within our paper as well. So hope this is a little bit informative. I hope you like the videos that I linked to the bottom, and have a good day.